Hi everyone, welcome to another Procreate tutorial. This is the drawing that we will be completing in today's video. If you are new here, I mainly post Procreate tutorials, so if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, before we get started, the only thing that you will need to do is download the color palette, and I have it linked in the description below. It's totally free to download, but go ahead and open up the file that downloads and it'll automatically pop the color palette into Procreate for you so that you can use the same colors as you follow along with the video today. So take a second to go and grab that and then come back and we'll get started. Okay, first things first, we will go over our canvas dimensions. They are 8 inches wide by 10 inches high at 300 dpi. The color profile that we're using is the second one on the RGB list, and for our layers today, at the end of the video, we've used about 15 layers, so make sure you have at least that many available by checking here. If you do not, you can lower your DPI to get more layers. This is the color palette that you should have imported, or if you want, you can go ahead and try to use your own colors, whatever works best for you. But we are just going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we are going to do is draw out our pond section on the bottom here. So we are going to be on layer 1. We are going to grab this first color on the first row of the color palette, grab the selection tool, set it to rectangle with color fill turned on, and we are just going to cover the bottom 1/4 of our canvas with a rectangle. So I am just going to start off the left side over here about 1/4 of the way up and start drawing my rectangle all the way across off both the bottom and right side of the screen, and then let go and it will cover that section of our canvas with a perfect rectangle that will become our pond. Next, we are going to go ahead and add the rocks. So let's add a new layer on our layer menu, drag it below our pond layer that we just drew. And then on our color palette, let's grab the first color on the 3rd row. For the brush, let's grab the monoline brush under the calligraphy tab. Okay, and we are going to start by drawing our frontmost rock. There will be 3 of them, so a small one in the front, one that kind of goes off the right, and then one in the back that goes off the left side. So we'll start with this front smaller rock, so in a little bit from the left side of our canvas and kind of starting under this like pond layer that we have, we're just going to draw a little rock shape, kind of like that. And then go ahead and drag your pen behind the water and connect it to the beginning of your shape so that you can fill it in. Then we are going to click on this layer on the layer menu, turn on alpha lock, and then we are going to start shading it. So we are going to grab the second color on the last row here, switch our brush to the to be compressed charcoal brush under the charcoals category. We have our size set to about 20%. And this first color that we're using, we are just going to focus mostly towards the top of section of our rock, like maybe the top half or so. Go ahead and grab the 3rd color on the last row and focus this really, really close to the top, right on the edges. And then lastly, grab this 4th color, the darker color on our last row, and we are going to add a little bit of this just to the bottom area of the rock to add some more texture down there. So we're going to do this again for our next rock. So let's go to our layer menu, add a new layer, go back to our first color on the last row, go back to our monoline brush, and we are going to start off the right side of the canvas here, maybe another almost halfway but not quite halfway up the side, and we are just going to go ahead and draw another squiggly line like this that goes under the water and then off the right side of the canvas to kind of close the shape so that we can fill it in. Let's go ahead and go back to our layer menu. Let's actually drag this layer below our other rock click on it and turn on alpha lock, and then we're going to do the same texturing thing. So let's grab the second color on the last row, switch back to our charcoal brush. Again, focus this one mostly towards the top half of the rock. Grab our third color on the last row, right on the tippy top of the rock. And grab our last color on the last row and focus this more towards the bottom. And then we are going to go to our layer menu and we are going to add one more rock. It is also going to be in the background of our first rock, so we can leave it right here. Switch back to our first color on the last row, switch back to our monoline brush. And similarly, we're going to start almost halfway up the canvas, but not quite on the left side now. And do another little squiggly, and then take it off the left side of the page under the pond so that we can fill it in. Now that I have that done, I actually do want it to be behind this other rock. So I'm going to go to my layer menu and move it below it. And I like that better. So then we will click on this layer, turn on alpha lock, and do our shading and highlighting again. So second color on the third row first. Switch back to our charcoal to be compressed brush. Switch to the third color on the last row. And the last color on the last row. Okay, so that is it for our rocks. So now we are going to go ahead and move on to our trees in the background. So we are going to do these behind the rocks. They are all going to be on one layer. So let's go ahead and add a new layer, drag it below this other rock layer so that it's behind all of them. And then we're going to grab the second color on the top row of our color palette. And we are going to go ahead and just switch back to the monoline brush again. So what we're going to do first is lay out like the trunks of our trees. They're not going to be very thick because we're going to cover the entire tree in like pine needle looking texture. But we just want to kind of lay out our different heights and spacing. So one thing to keep in mind is that I am going to put the moon in this upper right corner. So I don't want my trees to go too high there. So I'm just going to go ahead and start on this side and just draw some lines. They don't have to be perfectly vertical, but I am just going to hold my brush down to turn it into a perfectly straight line. So I'll put one there. Move over a little. This one might be a little bit taller. But then again, I'm going to put my moon maybe right here. So then we'll go quite a bit shorter here. Maybe a little bit taller and closer. Shorter again. Taller again. I'm going to click edit shape and move this one over just a little bit. And then let's do a really tall one on this left side to kind of finish out our picture. So I just have them staggered all the way across. But again, my moon will probably go right in this area, so I've left room for that there. If you want to make any adjustments, you can just use the arrow tool and kind of move them around. So I'm just going to move them to the left and down just a smidge to kind of space them out a little more evenly left to right and leave a little bit more room in my sky. So next, while we're on this same layer, same color, we are going to switch our brush to this Aurora brush under the artistic category. We're going to set the size to between 5 and 10%. I have mine at about 7. And on each of these lines that I drew, I'm just going to start at the top and go side to side all the way down. sometimes going out a little further, sometimes not as far, but getting wider as I get towards the bottom, but skinnier towards the top. Just make sure you cover that entire little line that you drew in the middle. But then there can be some other gaps between some of your branches and stuff, just kind of make them look pretty random. So maybe something about like this. So that gives a really good pine tree type texture to our trees. So that's a fun way to use that brush. So now that we have the tree part done, we're going to add some highlights to them as well. So let's go ahead and go to this layer on our layer menu, click on it, turn on alpha lock, go to the color palette and select the third color on the third row. And we are going to switch back to our to be compressed charcoal brush under the charcoals category. And we are going to drop this size to maybe 5%. And we are just going to very lightly kind of add a little bit of highlights just throughout the trees, going left to right in certain areas. Not all over the tree, but just maybe kind of where like your bigger branches are. And just kind of sporadically just to add a little bit of highlight to them. So then your tree layer should look something like this. And next we are going to do the sky. So now we left our background white in order to do all these different sections so that we could see everything easier. But now that those main parts are done, we're going to go to our layer menu, find this background color layer at the bottom of your layers, and click the first color on the color palette. We'll add a lot more definition to it so it won't look quite as jarring as it does right now. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add a new layer, drag it below all of our other layers right above the background color layer. Okay, and then we are going to switch our brush. To do the sky, we are going to go under the airbrushing category to the soft blend brush. Set the size to about 5%. And what we're going to do is just switch off between the 4 colors on the second row, all on the same layer. So let's start with the first color on the second row. And we are just going to go back and forth horizontally all over the background in little sections, fairly lightly for the most part, but you can make some areas thicker. Go behind the trees as well. And then we'll switch to the second color on the second row and do the same thing. And it's okay if you overlap some of the colors. Switch to the next one when you're ready. And we'll do the last one now. It's just a darker blue color, a little bit darker than our background. Now that we have all of our colors laid down nicely, we're just going to get them blended a little bit better. So let's click on the wand tool here, click on Gaussian Blur. If you have the old Procreate, you'll have to click Layer, but the new version just automatically pops to this screen. And then let's just slide this to maybe 10 to 15% to just kind of make them really blend together. We can move on and we will add a new layer above this layer. We will switch to the third color on the top row, and we will switch our brush to the turpentine brush under the painting category. We'll set the size of that also to about 5%, and we're just going to do a very similar thing with this white color to add some more streaks to our sky. like that. And finally, to the sky, we will add our moon. So let's add a new layer above this one. We're going to use the same color to draw our moon, but we are going to switch to the monoline brush under the calligraphy tab again. And we're just going to draw a perfect circle up in the upper right area here. So draw a circular shape, hold it down, touch your finger to the screen to make it a perfect circle. And then go ahead and fill it in. After that, we will go to our layer menu here, make a duplicate of the circle layer. Grab the bottom one, click on the wand icon, Gaussian Blur, and if you have the old version of Procreate, you might need to click Layer, otherwise it will pop to this screen and we will just slide to maybe 20%. Go to our layer menu though and make a duplicate of this blurry layer that we just made to make it a little bit brighter. And then I will just go to my layer menu and drag these two together so they all snap to one layer. But there we have a nice bright glow. Next, go back to our original circle layer here, click on it and turn alpha lock on. And then we will go and grab this fourth color on the top row. And we are going to grab under the organic category, we are going to grab this clay brush. Set the size to maybe 5%, and we are just going to draw all over the moon with this to give it some texture. Okay, let's add another new layer. Let's go back to our third color on the top row, and we are now going to draw the stars. So let's go under the airbrushing category to this soft airbrush. Set the size to maybe 20%. And we are just going to go across the sky and add some stars. Some bigger, some smaller. If you just barely touch your brush to the screen, you'll get a really nice like faint one. And then if you hold it down longer, you'll get a brighter one. Just kind of randomly go through and add these. Okay, and lastly for the sky, we are going to add some birds. So add another new layer on your layer menu. Go back to our second color on the top row. And we are going to switch to the dry ink brush under the inking menu at maybe 15%. And we are just going to draw some little bird shapes, like just little V's in the sky of different shapes and sizes. Something like that. And that is it for our sky portion. And lastly, we are going to finish off our water down here. So we need a reflection of the moon and the colors in the sky, as well as a reflection of our rocks. And we're going to add some more texture to it as well. So let's first go and find our pond layer, this very first rectangle that we drew. Click on this layer, turn on alpha lock. We're going to grab the soft brush under the airbrushing category. Not the one that we used earlier, the soft airbrush, but just the soft brush. Go back to our 4 colors though on the second row, and we are going to do the same thing to this layer, but in a much lighter fashion. So let's set the brush to maybe 10%. And I'm just going to very lightly add little sections of these colors going similarly in like a horizontal motion, but just much lighter and blurrier than we have in the sky. And then lastly, while we're here, we will grab this third color on the top row and do a similar thing right about where the moon would be. Just add very, very lightly, kind of add a little bit of this really bright white color. Nothing in like a perfect circle, but just kind of more in like a blob there to kind of give that idea. Next, we will make a reflection of the rocks. So in order to do this, since our rocks are completed and we're not going to make any edits to them, I'm going to go to the layer menu and slide all 3 of these rock layers together so that they're all on one layer. And this will just make it easier to duplicate. So we will slide left on this layer, click duplicate, drag this one above the water. So we'll have one above the water, one below the water. The one that's above the water will be our reflection. So click on it and turn it into a clipping mask so that it will clip to this water shape here. Click the arrow tool, click flip vertical, and then let's drag it onto our water so it'll still be connected to our original rock layer a little bit, but you'll only see it on the water portion there. Next, we are going to go to the layer menu. On this layer, click the N, our reflection layer, and we're going to drop this way down to maybe 35 to 40% so that it's just a real nice reflection and we can still see our colors and stuff from the background. And lastly, we don't want our edges to be this sharp on our rocks. So go back to our layer menu on this layer, click on it and turn off alpha lock, and then click on the wand tool, Gaussian Blur, again click layer if you need to, and then we will blur this just a little bit, maybe 5 to 10%, somewhere in there, just so the edges are a little bit blurrier. And then let's add another new layer, click on this layer, turn it to a clipping mask, and we are going to add some waves to our water. So let's first click this third color on the last row, switch our brush again, and we are going to find the elements category and click on oceans. Set the size to maybe 50%, and then we are just going to very lightly add some little sections of waves here to our water. Make sure that your canvas is straight up and down, otherwise your waves will be crooked. And then let's go ahead and grab this fourth color on the last row, the darker color, and add just a little bit of that as well, pretty lightly, but just to add some more dimension to our water. Okay, and that completes our drawing today. So I hope you had fun. If you did, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more tutorials from me in the future. If you would like to share your drawing on Instagram, I would love to see it, so go ahead and post it and then tag me so that I can check it out. While you're there, go ahead and give me a follow so that you can see what I'm working on next. Thanks for watching!